Special City Council meeting for Monday, November 4th, 2019. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Karen.
Here.
Councilmember Gates. Councilmember McNeil.
Here.
Councilmember Metzger.
Here.
Councilmember Traver.
Here.
Councilmember Underhill.
Here.
Councilmember Wolfersberger.
Here.
We have a quorum, Your Honor.
Thank you. I'll seek a motion to excuse Member Gates from tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will start this evening with the invocation by Richard Gurton of Family Bible Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, count it an honor and a privilege tonight to be able to address you on behalf of those who are gathered here in this council. Lord, as we begin this meeting this evening, and as we begin this month, Lord, a month where we are reminded to be thankful, I think, Lord, of the words of the 103rd Psalm. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not his benefits. And Lord, help us to appreciate the many benefits that you have bestowed upon us in our community and in the many things that we have. You have truly benefited us. And so we give you thanks. I thank you, Lord, for our administration that we have in this city, Lord, and for their knowledge and their willingness, Lord, to cause things to run smoothly and orderly here, for our city employees who work so hard, for our police and fire department, and ask God for your protection upon them, and I give you thanks. But at the start of this meeting, Lord, tonight, I thank you for those who serve on this council, for their willingness to give of their time and their energy, Lord, to govern us well. And so, Lord, I would ask that you would bless them, that you would give them wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to carry out, Lord, the things that will be before them. And so we truly want to give you thanks, and we ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
And pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will start this evening with the approval of the agenda, starting with public comment on agenda items, followed by the consent agenda. Item 10A, we have a public hearing for the proposed amendment of City Ordinance 91.01 and 91.02. Item 12A, we have discussion on City Ordinance 91.04. Item 12B, we have the Brooksfield Terminal funding. Item 12C, we have a resolution authorizing issuance and sales of electric utility system revenue bonds, Series 2019. Item 12D, we have the first quarter financial report. Item 12E, we have the first quarter investment portfolio. Item 12F, we have the first quarter cash and investment position report, followed by item 13A, the airport board's appointments, followed then by public comment on non-agenda items and council and manager communications.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
A motion and support. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That brings us to public comment on agenda items. Anyone wishing to speak may do so for a maximum of 5 minutes.
Barry Wayne Adams, 622 West Green Street. Is this proposed ordinance 91.04 having to do with this CAD issue that was in the paper the other day? How can you even tell from reading from this paper what 91.04 the subject matter is?
I agree.
Is that what it's about?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's what I came to address. I just wanted to make sure it was an agenda item.
Yes.
you got to put stuff on here with clarity so you know what you're talking about. Okay, there are, from reading what was in the advisor, there are a couple of problematic issues that arise from this supposedly well-intended effort. Number one is, does the municipality really have the authority to make such an ordinance? And the ability of a municipality to enact ordinances is not plenary. It is derivative of the acts of the state legislature and, of course, the federal and state constitutions. And looking at the public acts of the state of Michigan, the legislature has only addressed its concern about cats in two major areas, either dealing with the commercial regulation of pet shops or the commercial regulation of scientific research facilities. There is no state authority to impose such a liability on an individual inhabitant of the state of Michigan. So you really don't have the authority to make such an ordinance. And the second aspect that presents its problematic nature is looking at it from a humanistic point of view. Now, we anthropomorphize the issue and try to say, well, if I feed a homeless person, I have to tell an authority and they have to come and get them and sterilize them. We would know that that's an abomination and an egregious abuse of governmental authority. Now, where do we presume to take the authority to say that we can take cats that we label as feral, which is not too much different from the issues that homeless people deal with. A lot of cats are not really wild. They just were in abusive homes and ran away and are just trying to survive. And, you can't fault them for that. And there will be issues of what if you end up grabbing a cat that really lives a block and a half down and start doing all this stuff to him? That neighbor is going to be pretty upset. And I don't even know how Albion presumed to make such an ordinance when there is no state authority or constitutional authority to make such an ordinance or impose the liabilities under color of law of the business model of a certain number of people who have a certain worldview about the relationship between humans and animals. Now, the foot in the door aspect of this proposed ordinance is, where do we go from here? Is it going to be illegal to feed a squirrel? Is it going to be illegal to put a bird feeder out in your yard? These are things that are really outside of the legalistic realm, and the well-intended nature of grabbing cats that we don't think fit into our comfortable view of the world, take them and sterilize them. It seems to be reminiscent of something that they would do in China or Russia or something of that nature. Again, I've given the defense on a lawsuit against the municipality if they decide to enact this kind of ordinance. It would be an act ultra vires outside of the authority of the municipality, and unless the state enacts something similar to that, you people are really pretty much handcuffed as to what you can do. The real focus of advocacy on this issue should be going up to Lansing and talking to the legislature and not trying to, hit different municipalities and try to get them to step outside their authority. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have to say my name?
Please.
D. Nelson, address 333 Westbrook Court. I'm also here as a cat advocate. I'll just tell you what's happened to me. When we first moved here about a little less than 3 years ago, Dennis and I used to always, go down to the boardwalk, and we knew where the cats were being fed, and we knew another place where they were being fed, and we felt so good to be in a community that had this kind of compassion and caring for animals that can't really fend for themselves, and it wasn't really their fault that they're in that situation. So that's how I was feeling. And then I still feel, I want to read you this one thing. The greatness, this is attributed to Mahatma Gandhi, but I almost think I've read this by some Chinese guy that was older. But anyway, the greatness of a nation in its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated. And another professor of earth sciences has said, like humans, animals have their own interests, notably that of not suffering. A common point that justifies equal treatment with regard to suffering. Now, I believe that really strongly, but I understand that I went online and I've gotten all this stuff online, and I changed my mind, but only in certain ways. But what I found is that these agencies that are looking out for animal treatment are pointing out, I'll read you the statement, that I wasn't aware of. Like we go about our lives and we think you just pick up general things that you see and feel, but sometimes when you get educated, you learn the true facts about something. But you don't, then you have to determine if these alternative facts, whose alternative facts are right and whose are wrong. You know what I mean? I'm really opposed to the euthanization or just outright killing of these animals. Like I'm totally, but except for if they are going to continue to do some of this abject suffering that's in a lot of these things I've been reading about, then perhaps I wouldn't be, because I wouldn't want to be in that kind of situation, like humans are in, that you can't, just kill yourself, you know what I'm saying. I wouldn't want to be suffering and not have any way out of it. Let's see here. Do you care if I just read this off a little bit? Okay. One thing I did, both my husband and I wondered about, this is before I tell you about this horrible stuff, is this really a problem in Marshall? Did someone complain? Was this many people who complained? Or was this one person who complained? Were these cats really harming anyone or not? And what are the instances in which this was reported? And do you have some kind of proof of that? Or was everything going along okay? Like we thought it was for years. But I didn't know what all these people that are trying to get these things, like you said, into action, what they had to say. Like this PETA, that's a particular site I went on. They said feral cats live short, hard lives. They never die of old age, which I think I'd like to ask this gentleman here if that's true. In addition to contagious diseases, for feral cats, minor cuts or puncture wounds can turn into raging infections and abscesses. Untreated upper respiratory infections can cause cat's eyes and noses to become so caked with mucus that they can barely see or breathe. Ferals often scratch their ears until they bleed because they are driven mad by the pain and itching of ear mites and related infections. Others die from blood loss or anemia because of worms, fleas, and untreated injuries. Urinary tract infections, which frequently lead to urinary blockages in male cats, cause slow and excruciating deaths if left untreated. And then it said that if they escape all these perils, they may still fall prey to agonizing deaths at the hands of cruel people. And then it went on to tell some of these. And I read some sites where guys online were saying how they kill them and blah, 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 really horrible stuff. So anyway, I made these copies, and I thought I could give them to anybody in case there's a committee or something, or they probably already have them. But this is Alley Cat Allies, and I have another one I somehow misplaced. But anyway, it's how to implement an organizational trap-neuter return program, feral cats in the public. Now, both of these things have a lot of good things to say about this kind of arrangement, and that they, after, if they do get these kinds of treatments that you've heard about, they can live to be old age. They can, but that's if it's all done by people who are qualified to do it and do a really good job of it. Because if you don't, and there are other sites online that talk against this, and that's the one I don't have. But I did have it. I'm getting old. But anyway, I'm just hoping that you're going to look at it. I don't really like that ordinance either, because I think that those people that were feeding those cats were, you know what I mean, kind,
Compassionate.
caring people, and they shouldn't be, hounded by a policeman. I think that's really out of it. But I do think that this issue should be looked at and should be really, really looked into by the people that have to make these ordinances, or else you don't really know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? And I don't know either. I fail to understand what would be best for these cats. But it's just that I'm one person who cares in your community, and I just want you to know I care, and I'm going to follow it because I care. And I hope all of you do too. And I hope the best for the city, and everyone. Some of these things, they say that all these rumors about cats that in some cities, and I don't know if you guys have gotten those complaints, oh, I'm going to get rabies, I'm going to die from this cat disease or not. For feral cats, these experts say no. The new science out on it, and they explain why and all of that. But anyway, I wish I brought that other one, but I'll just give this to you guys.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the comments,
Out of
Dee.
it. So,
Thank you for your
you.
comments tonight.
You're welcome.
Any other comments on agenda items this evening? All right, hearing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Item 7A, to schedule a public hearing for the solid waste disposal options. Item 7B, we have a transformer purchase for Chelsea Milling. Item 7C, we have the city council minutes for the work session on Monday, October 21st, 2019, and the regular session on Monday, October 21st, 2019. Item 7D, we have city bills totaling $883,452.02. Any discussion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, on 7A, we would like to change that date to December 3rd for the public hearing. Tonight, we'd like to just introduce the ordinance, at your next meeting on the 18th, we would actually have the first reading, and then you'd have the public hearing and possible adoption on December 3rd. But I'm also asking, since this is a pretty complicated issue, that if possible, if we could have a work session this Saturday on the solid waste, 8 o'clock. We'll have it downstairs if the council desires that. I think we can give you more information so that when it comes time for the public hearing, you'll be very educated. It also gives us a little more time to do public engagement on this. So what we're asking tonight is to hold a work session this coming Saturday and then actually establish the public hearing for December 3rd, which is a Tuesday. That week we move the council meeting because of the parade on December 2nd.
Thank you. Any other comments on the consent agenda? So I'd seek a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Support?
We have a motion and support. Roll call vote, please.
Member McNeil?
Yes.
Member Metzger?
Yes.
Member Traver?
Yes.
Member Underhill?
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger?
Yes.
Mayor Karen?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us to item 10A, under public hearings, the proposed amendment of City Ordinance 91.01 and 91.02. Tom?
I'll initially take that, and this originally came up through our public safety directors, Scott McDonald. After going through some of the ordinance that Scott has been working around, we found that we had a couple things missing. And there's really, it relates to that the Riverwalk wasn't designated as a city park. There were some hours that were inconsistent from park to park. And correctly, in error, it said that the athletic field was on the east side of town, not the west side of town. So what we have here is revisions to 9101 and 9102 to make those corrections. And so after you hold the public hearing, then we can answer any other questions.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak may do so. They have 5 minutes. State your name and address for the record. All right, hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Council, do you have any questions on the proposed change to the ordinance?
Tom, was it always the city's intent to have the Riverwalk a park?
Yes, the Riverwalk was started in about 2000. Some of the work at Stewart's Landing was done in the late 90s, and the Riverwalk construction was 99, 2000, but it was always intended to be a city park. It was just never added as we built. There was multiple phases over the decade to build that, so it was always intent to be a city park.
Okay.
Do you know if there's, so I'm supportive, obviously, of including it in the changes, but do you know if there's any thoughts on the hours of the park being open? I know that's a popular place, particularly in the summer, for people to walk and run early in the morning.
I guess I'd like Scott to come up if he would. He runs into it over his career with the city, and I'm going to maybe let him address the
Sure.
situations that he's run up against.
We would like it consistent with the other parks. Most of our trouble that we find occurs in the middle of the night, not so much in the morning. I would like to think that the patrol staff has enough common to know that people are out jogging in the morning, 5, 6 o'clock, and they're not down there. It's at night, and we're having trouble with vandalism, use of alcohol, narcotics, and so on, is what we would like to address by having the hours consistent with the other ones.
Okay.
Is it well lit at night?
Yeah.
If all the lights are working, I'm comfortable walking down there.
Okay. All right.
had a question on the feeding of animals. What is the penalty for that? There's no,
If it's not listed with a specific penalty, it would be a misdemeanor. Any of our ordinances, it doesn't say specifically it's a civil infraction or municipal civil infraction, is a misdemeanor under 1099.
so what would be the likely impact on a person?
You'd get an appearance citation out of court.
Okay. And a fine of some sort, or?
Yeah, the judge would review the case and issue a fine, yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm sympathetic to the, I mean, feeding birds in a park, feeding squirrels in a park. I mean, it sounds like we're criminalizing that to an extent. I have some concerns about that.
I think we're still on 10A, which is renaming the parks.
I know we went back to the cats.
It isn't,
Is it?
No,
no.
yeah, we're still on 9101 and 2. It's just park
I
order.
agree with the other guy, this is confusing.
Yeah, this, the portion is 9104.
Gotcha.
That I think you're going to discuss next.
Okay.
That regulates various activities within the park. Just the hours.
Do you find that happening a lot still?
Pardon me?
Finding activity a lot in the parks after 10?
Not too often, but that would probably be our biggest customer, would be the Riverwalk. The athletic field, there's an exception if there's a game going on, that would stay. Ketchum Park there for a few years we were, but that seems to have kind of been on the wane. Most of our night activity would be on the Riverwalk.
All right, any other questions for Chief?
I guess, do we have signage then for the Riverwalk to designate it as a park with hours? I think there are probably signs with hours at the other parks. Do we need to
That
do that?
I could not answer. I'm not
I do-
aware of any.
I don't think there is signage. I'm not sure if there's signage in really any of our parks.
There's at the athletic field, but we specifically requested it based on some problems, but it's probably something that should be addressed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
particularly if we are going to enforce hours.
Okay. Always is a problem when you do signage is where is the entry point? So you have to put in,
That one's a lot.
Right.
You have
Yeah.
multiple entry points.
I know, and that's what's, we would need to do our best to try to get the entry points. I'm not a real advocate for signs everywhere, but again, sometimes you have to do it, so.
And perhaps some pavement markings might be a little more aesthetically pleasing than a sign. I don't know. Just a suggestion.
I'm not big on signs either, but people should know what time the park opens and closes. Any parks.
I think we would strategically try to place them at the main entry points where parking lots are, or coming out
parking
of
lots,
major sidewalks. So we'll work on that.
There are some signs up, not have bicycles and motorized
Yeah.
vehicles, probably in the same places in addition to that would be.
My question about the hours in the park, with the Riverwalk being a park, would people be using that later at night as their route of transportation, walking home from, let's say, the Dark Horse, and they're trying to walk to the east side of town? Would they take the Riverwalk? And is that
We have not
unlawful?
encountered that. I mean, certainly it's possible, but again, I would hope the officers have some discretion
Okay,
if you're on your way home from work.
sure. All right. Yeah.
Actually, I have just one, I know that the Riverwalk was included in the North Country Trail. Was that any sort of official designation? Did we agree to anything on that?
I don't think we agreed to any times or anything like that. I think it was just that we're a trail community, or I'm trying to think, there's a term that we have, but I don't remember any designation of hours you could or could not be open.
Thank Thank you. So the recommendation is to approve the amendments to City Ordinance 91.1 and 91.2, establishing the Riverwalk as a city park, to assign it park hours consistent with our other city parks, and to correct an error in the location of the athletic field. Seek a motion to approve.
So moved. Support.
We have a motion and support. Any further discussion on this item? All right, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Metzger?
Yes.
Member Traver?
Yes.
Member Underhill?
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger?
Yes.
Mayor Karen?
Yes.
Member McNeil?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us to item 12A, discussion on City Ordinance 91.04.
There you go.
As you're aware, at the last meeting, more on feral cats, and you asked that this be brought back in front of you. In City Ordinance 9104A and F are the two areas that the people that are feeding cats are in violation of. The police department did get complaints from a neighbor of that this was being violated, and then one of our police officers did stop and talk to at least once, I don't know if it was more, that they're in violation of this section A and F of the code, and it's here to, if you desire to change the ordinance, we would come back at future meetings with the ordinance change. Some of this was changed back when there was a large feral cat population along the Riverwalk. And at that time, the council said feral cats can be over in the compost center, which they are. It was just, at that time, a girl had been bitten, had to go through the rabies, or whatever the series is that you have to do. And because their same feed that was being put down were also being eaten by other raccoons, possums, etc., and just was a problem. So that at that time, the council decided that they would allow the feral cat population to be fed in the compost center. Over time, the group has come back and has been putting shelters in around the Riverwalk, and then also feeding the cats. So it's here for you to decide if this should stand, or if we have an ordinance, we should enforce it. If you don't want it as an ordinance, we should appeal it then.
Tom, I think I was vocal about this last meeting, but I had wanted it to come back in the form of a work session, not as in form of a vote tonight.
Well, you would not be able to vote tonight. If you want to change the ordinance, we would come back with a formal amendments to the ordinance. We can't do anything tonight, except if you decide as a council as a whole that you don't want to change the ordinance, we need to inform the people who are feeding and putting the houses down there that they can't do that, and our officers will give warnings, and just, we don't intend or want to have somebody go to court. So we just need to know is either this ordinance you want to keep or you don't want to keep, and that's why it's back tonight. Now, if you want to do a work session on just this item, we can schedule that sometime in the near future, whatever you desire.
That would be my preference.
And the ordinance today is specific to parks.
That is correct.
There's no language anyplace else in our code of ordinances that dictate whether or not people can feed animals.
That is correct. If the Dark Horse or anybody along the area they wanted to feed, they could. We don't have any control as government over that.
Mm-hmm.
But this is our property, and as a city, so you have authority.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I find myself wondering if we could possibly change the language to be specific to domestic animals, and that would allow, like I said, feeding of birds and squirrels and, wildlife. I don't know if that's feasible or reasonable.
Is a feral cat a domestic animal? I don't know the
You know
definition.
what? How do you know it's feral? I
Yeah.
mean, the bottom line is you don't know when you see a cat what it is.
I think Albion has, right now they have it, so it's the bird feeders that are okay, how they have it written, or how you feed a bird. And then the cats are, they only have it designated to a group that actually has it. It's going to go in there and trap, neuter, and release them. That's kind of how their ordinances are now.
And if you were to do what Albion does under F, it says no person may hunt, trap, feed, or endanger animals. So you'd have to add a lot of clarity to what is or is
Proof
not
group.
allowed, to trap an animal, trap somebody's cat is. Mr. Adams said is, do you know whose cat it is,
Yeah.
And is, so I know there's 6 or 7 cats that travel through my backyard on a daily basis, but.
I thought those were yours.
No, we don't have one. But, so, I mean, these are the questions. I mean, it's, do you want shelters left in your park, which are basically boxes? And this is an easy question for you.
Sure, I do feel that there's a lot of discussion that has to be had on this topic. I think we need to find out some more information with the group that presented to us last week and that's currently doing these efforts on where they're doing most of their feeding. I know some of it is on private property, but some of it is not. So finding out some more specifics on that information and just kind of digging into this a little bit more so we can make that decision.
So besides inviting them back to a work session, what other information would you like?
Well, it'd be helpful, so we heard a little bit about what Albion has done. It'd be helpful to have a bit of a sense of what other communities have done, both on the city-owned properties, but then also for broader ordinances.
Well, I do think there's an aspect too, I mean, we don't have, dog catchers anymore, for lack of a better term. So if this isn't an issue that if we're going to restrict people from doing something about this, we probably ought to do something about it. And that's a money consideration as well. So that's a different issue. Okay. So I guess that would be if we're going to leave the ordinance alone, then what are our options to address the cat population?
I don't have an
No,
answer.
as a work session item is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we just schedule a work session?
Would you like, I guess, at that work session, you had the presentation already and was given some of the ordinances.
I'd like to see a couple of the people that actually do it here and how they maintain the areas. Like who spoke with us, Amy? I think she's one of the one that feeds, and Deb feeds the cats.
Okay.
It'd be nice to hear what they have to say. I'm pretty sure they're responsible in how they handle it.
Oh, I'm quite sure they are. Actually, I think somebody had mentioned that they had been actually bitten and scratched. I think talked to you, Tricia. But
No, don't touch them.
yeah, but they were trying to do some of this. But again, that's one case. But I can get in contact with Amy and just have her spend a little of your work session on that.
All right, any other further recommendations or discussion? We can talk about I know we have some work sessions scheduled out the next couple meetings, but we'll have to take a look and see when that's going to work.
Yeah. I don't see this as an emergency issue or anything like this. Let's get the information, from what Battle Creek does or how Albion did theirs, and also see what our rights are on our parks versus, what Mr. Adams said off the property. That would be an interesting question for our city attorney.
All right, thank you. That moves us to item 12B, the Brooks Field terminal funding. Tom's going to bring us up to speed on this one.
Yes. We are out for bid right now for the new terminal building at the airport. Earlier in the year, bids came in that were higher. So they have went out for bid again for the terminal with 4 deducts or alternatives that if the bids come in high, they can then choose, and when I say they, I'm looking at that to be the airport board, of how they could value engineer. At the last bid, there was only 2 bidders. At the meeting, the pre-bid meeting, there were 6 contractors there, and there was a 7th who was interested that just was not at that. It wasn't a mandatory meeting. So our engineer architect is feeling there are going to be some good prices. Bids come in this Friday, and but they needed to decide how we would fund this prior, so that there doesn't be looks of any collusion on the bids, where after we would say, well, we want to take this out, or this bid or that bid. And so the state of Michigan is asking us to look at funding options. And there is a proposed plan that is on page 34 of your agenda. These are 3 options that were given from our architect and MDOT. And we're recommending at this time option 3. We would take our 4 years of allotment from the federal and state, and then borrow from another airport who would not be spending their allotment, such as the City of Niles or some other airport. And then the difference could be made up with a loan from MDOT up to 10 years at prime plus 1%. But again, until we have the total, we wouldn't know exactly if we would even need the 100,000 or if we would need a full years of allotment from borrow from another city. We're recommending that we go with option 3 and let the state know that before the bid opening on Friday. The airport board has rescheduled their meeting for next Monday so that they can take a look at the bids, take a look at the value engineering if they need to do that, and then we'd be coming back on the 18th of November with a recommendation on the cost, the value engineering if needed, and award to the most qualified bidder. So tonight we're just asking is to give us the available funding, and we're recommending option 3.
Is the, sorry if I may, is the expectation that the annual allotment will be what pays for the principal and interest on the $100,000 loan?
Sorry, the annual federal allotment?
Yeah, the coming years.
I don't think we can use it for that.
No, that would be coming out of the general fund or their operating budget because it wouldn't be considered capital. I think I was going to head that route. So that would be, roughly $10,000 additional out of their budget for the next 10 years, plus a little bit of interest.
Okay.
Is it, so I know that there were some alternatives as well. One was to cancel the project. There are funds that we would have to repay if we chose to cancel the project, correct?
Correct. We would have to pay the share of the architectural and engineering services. We would have to pay the state back, and those don't have that number here, but we would have to if we cancel the project, yes.
It was fairly significant. I think it was in the six figures for the repayment. And then I know that when Kristen was working on this too, part of the consideration for delaying the project was that we could, depending on timing of the budget years with the state and federal governments, we could have potentially the 2020 NPE that would be available to us based on when the project actually completes. Do we still think it's possible that,
We cannot use over 4 years allotment.
but if we accrue, so if we, I think the way Kristen was looking at it originally was if we start the payment next year, sort of in the, prior to June, and then use we get the September, I think, allotment from the federal government. I think there was Kristen had originally thought we could use the 2020 funds for that year because we would be in a new fiscal year.
That wasn't what MDOT was telling us when we were there. Is that correct, Eric? Eric was with me that day.
Yeah, they said they would limit us to 4 years.
Okay.
That's why we did problem.
Yep. Okay.
And I do want to correct, because this sheet was put together by our architect engineer at Mead Hunt. And if you look under, well, option 2, it says the MDOT loan, which can be paid back with 2020 entitlements. So that may be, we may be able to use that entitlement for that loan. I just saw that on there. But again, we're going to be meeting with MDOT first part of December to talk about a lot of issues out at the airport that we need to get direction with them.
With knowing that it can be paid back with the entitlements, you still feel that option 3 is the best way to
Yes.
go?
And the main reason, if you look at option 2 only generates about $766,000 of the $925,000. So that means the other remaining roughly $160,000 would have to come from the general fund now.
Well, I'm hoping that we get a lot of competitive bids
Here too.
in for this project, so this isn't really an issue, but I appreciate you laying out these options for us.
Bids come in, I believe, 10 o'clock on
Yes, sir.
Friday morning, so I will try to get those by the end of the day to share with you.
Thank you. All right, any further questions? All right, so the recommendation is to approve the funding for the new Brooksfield terminal by using the 4 years of available federal and state funding, a loan of up to $100,000 from Michigan Department of Transportation, and borrow from another airport's funding allocation to be paid in 2021 from the city's federal allocation.
Just for clarification's sake, are we actually approving the funding, or are we approving the plan for funding?
I would say the plan.
And that's option 3.
And then when you actually approve the bids on the 18th, that would be we would have the numbers there for you.
All right, so I'd seek a motion to approve.
So moved.
Support.
So we have motion and support. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Traver?
Yes.
Member Underhill?
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger?
Yes.
Mayor Karen?
Yes.
Member McNeil?
Yes.
Member Metzger?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us to item 12C, the resolution authorizing issuance and sale of electric utility system revenue bonds, Series 2019.
Evening, Council. There's actually 2 resolutions that we will need tonight, one approving the ordinance and one approving the resolution to sell the bonds. On May 6th, 2019, Council approved the intent to sell these bonds. We have determined that the Perrin Dam remediation is right around the corner, estimated cost $2.5 million. The Pearl Street substation transformer and substation upgrades, another $2.5 million. And at a work session last week, we talked about repairing the hydros 1 and 3 at a cost approximately $260,000. The only difference between these electric bond ordinance and the water bond ordinance that you passed in, I believe it was May, is that these bonds are callable in 2028, 8 years. That was bond counsel and our financial advisors' recommendation. We talked about going 3-year bond call, and they recommended 8 years. Anything less, we would pay too much in interest. It would be not cost effective. The other thing in this ordinance is the defeasance, that if we do have the projected revenues that come in from the grow operations, we'll be able to put those excess revenues in a defeasance account, and at some time when we have enough money, we'll be able to just walk away from these bonds. That account will pay for the principal and interest payments for the next 20 years. So I asked, the recommendation is to approve the electric utility system revenue bond ordinance, and I apologize for you seeing that for the first time tonight.
Questions for John?
Just one if I may. It was originally expected that we'd pay for the dam remediation over time just through normal funds. Did something change to
I
go
think
this
if we
route
look
instead?
further into tonight at the cash position, we have like a negative 1.2 cash deficit in the electric fund. This assures that we have the money. Once we get started, we can complete the project.
Okay.
And I really don't want to get into these two projects simultaneously and find out that we have a cash flow problem and now we're worried about not paying, making payroll or accounts payable. This assures us in the next 2 to 3 years that we can finish these projects.
Actually, I have just one more. This is probably more for Ed than you, but the Chelsea milling changes, does that impact our time frame on Pearl Street substation?
No.
No? Okay. Thanks, Ed.
Are there any further questions for John? Okay, so the first recommendation is to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of electric utility system revenue bonds, Series 2019, in an amount not to exceed $5,750,000, and to grant the city manager or the city finance director the authority to sell and deliver the bonds without further council action.
That's the next resolution.
I'll do the other one first then.
You can do the handout.
Okay.
That one should be that one first.
Thank you. So the recommendation is to approve the attached electric utility system revenue bond ordinance, an ordinance to authorize and provide for the issuance of the City of Marshall electric utility system revenue bonds under provision of Act 94 of 1933 as amended.
So moved.
Support.
Need a roll call vote. We'll do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Again, based on the same information I just relayed on the projects, there's 2 parts to sell these bonds. The second part is to approve on a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of the electric utility system revenue bonds, Series 2019, in an amount not to exceed $5,750,000, and to also grant the finance director and the city manager the authority to sell the bonds without further involvement with council. It will provide for $5,750,000 worth of bonds to construct electric utility system improvements, publication of the official notice of sale and the bond buyer, delegation of sale bonds to the authorized officer without further approval by city council, and any other matters necessary to prepare for the sale and delivery of the bonds.
So it's Seek a motion to approve.
So moved. Support.
A motion and support. Any further discussion? We'll do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
And I told you earlier, my apologies, that reports came in, and I didn't forward that one on, so that's why your handout tonight, I didn't want John to have any blame in this, it was totally mine.
Thank you. So that will take us to item 12D, the first quarter financial report. John?
Yes. Again, first quarter ending September 30th, 2019. Again, you ask if I have any concerns or issues. Again, there's no bells and whistles going off, no alarms. Everything looks pretty close to the first quarter report that I issued a year ago. So again, I don't see any concerns at this point. Everything looks on track, and I want to thank all the department heads, superintendents for staying within budget. So the recommendation is to accept the report and place it on file.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any further questions for John regarding the report?
Just one question. So thank you for, it's always helpful when you highlight some areas where there's deviation above what you would expect. That's helpful. One thing that I noticed as I was walking through sort of section by section, that workers' compensation, sort of thematically, is well over budget. They're not major, but is there something going on with our workers' compensation environment?
We make that payment July 1st.
Okay.
So,
Got it.
and it's based on an estimate from basically 2 years ago.
Yep.
What we paid 2 years ago, then we come in and have a workman's comp audit,
Mm-hmm.
and then they set the new rates. So usually at the end of the year, for the first of next year, they'll come in, they'll audit all of our employees and say, you owe us some more, or we'll get a refund. I mean, it's kind of a guess. They send us a bill and we pay it.
Got it. Okay.
Any other questions? All right, so we have a motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That brings us to item 12E, the first quarter investment portfolio.
Yeah, if you look at the, thanks again, if you look at the investment portfolio, it's pretty simple. At this point, pooled cash represents 84.43% of our investments. We have one CD in the amount of $523,474.93 that represents 15.57% of our investments. Right now, the current CD is earning 2.1%. Our total weighted average of the entire portfolio is 1.1955%. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for John on the investment portfolio? So the motion would be to accept the first quarter investment portfolio report as presented.
So moved.
Support. The motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That brings us to 12F, the first quarter cash and investment position report.
Thank you. As of 9/30/2019, we have unrestricted cash in the amount of $3,982,013, restricted cash of $5,069,823, investments of $2,831,840, cash in our rate stabilization at MSCPA of $532,605, and our total investment at MSCPA as of 6/30/2019 of $4,624,288, for a grand total of cash and unrestricted investments of $6,813,853. I will point out that the restricted cash is so high is because there's about $3.9 million of the July 27th, 25th water bond funds that we haven't expended yet, and that's all restricted. answer any questions.
Any questions for John? All right, so the motion would be to accept the first quarter cash position report as presented.
So moved.
Support.
The motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
John. That brings us to item 13A, Airport Board appointments. I would make the recommendation to approve the reappointment of David Mead and Scott Southwell to the Airport Board with terms expiring October 1st of 2022.
So moved.
Support. Motion support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.